What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Cinema Sermons. My name is Kevin, and today we are continuing our 1980s review series with the year 1986. We are on the back half of the decade, and I think this is one of the weaker years in the 80s, especially compared to 1985, 1984, 1982, but it's still filled with just a ton of classics, as was every single year. So before we get started, hit that like, share, and subscribe button. It helps out the channel tremendously. And yeah, let's go ahead and count down the top 10 picks for the best films of 1986. And as always, this is a subjective list. There might be a movie on here that you don't think is that great. There might be some placements missing. It's my own subjective list, and I would love to see yours. Let me know down below what your top 10 is. Coming in at number 10 is Pretty in Pink. So this is a John Hughes classic. John Hughes just has so many classic films of that decade, but Pretty in Pink, Breakfast Club, all those kind of stuff with Molly Ringwald and 16 Candles and all those kind of movies. But Pretty in Pink is just another one that just stands out. You have the love triangle between her, Ducky, and the preppy guy. It's good for what it does. It's referenced all the time in Psych and TV shows like that. And yeah, just a staple of the decade. So coming in at number 10, Pretty in Pink. Number 9 is going to be the movie Labyrinth. So this is just a classic of the era, a classic of that decade. I know my mom loves it. She showed it to my sisters. She showed it to us. It's one that really is not my taste, but it's just so iconic, right? And I do remember that when my sisters were younger and they loved this movie, I was like the same age as Jennifer Connelly was. So I was like, hey, I'm not mad at this at all, because I just thought she was so attractive and she was so pretty. And then you see her in Top Gun Maverick and she's aged like a fine wine. But again, I was a teenager at the time, so that was cool for me to watch that. But I mean, David Bowie delivers just an iconic performance. Everybody loves this movie. Like I said, it's not necessarily my taste, but it's so iconic that it had to crack the top 10 of this list. So yeah, coming in at number 9 is Labyrinth. Dance, magic, dance. Number 8 for me is David Cronenberg's The Fly. The master of body horror delivers an all-time great movie with the wonderful, weird, and fantastic Jeff Goldblum in the lead and Gina Davis, and it's just a nasty, gross, grotesque movie as you watch him change into something evil and horrible and not human, right? And I think Jeff Goldblum is the only one who could have delivered this kind of performance. The practical effects in it still hold up today. As I said, David Cronenberg is the master of body horror and things like that, and The Fly absolutely delivers, absolutely kills it. It's still regarded as one of the greatest body horror films ever made, again, by the wonderful David Cronenberg. And yeah, this movie rocks and absolutely comes in at number 8. Number 7 is going to be Platoon. This is an all-star studded cast, man. You have Charlie Sheen, you have a young Johnny Depp. I'm sure there's even more that I just can't think of off the top of my head right now, but it's a star-studded cast, man. It's an ensemble film. Willem Dafoe is in this movie, and probably one of the most iconic death scenes of all time. The story follows, a platoon of people in the Vietnam War and some of the atrocities and things that happened in there. It's not my favorite war film. It's not my favorite Vietnam War film. That would have to go to We Were Soldiers. But it is a well-done movie, and it's a well-made movie. And man, what those guys had to go through is pretty horrible. It really is. And there's a quote that resonates with me a lot. And it's General Dwight D. Eisenhower. He said, "The soldier above all prays for peace, for he alone must bear the deepest scars and wounds of war." And I really believe that's true. We sent young men to go fight and die in Vietnam, and it was a draft. It was a conflict that I believe we had no business really being in, even though the Viet Cong were horribly torturing the people of Vietnam at that time. And I have a lot of Vietnamese friends, and I've heard some of the horror stories of what the Viet Cong did to them. It was horrendous. But, we drafted our own people and sent them to go die in this war for what? And the things that they saw, the things that they had to do, the things that they went through. And then, of course, there was a lot of bad men who were doing horrible things there as well. It was just a bad time. And I think this movie does a really good job of capturing that and explaining that to the best of my abilities. I wasn't there, man. Thank God I've never been in war, and I've never experienced that. Like I said, it's not my favorite movie, not my favorite war film, not my favorite Vietnam War film, but this is a really good movie. Like I said, you get a young Johnny Depp, you get Charlie Sheen, you get Willem Dafoe. It's an all-star studded cast, and it comes in at, what number did I say? Number 7. Comes in at number 7. Coming in at number 6 is going to be Stand By Me. This is an all-time classic coming-of-age tale, where you have these 4 friends and it centers around them. and just all the iconic scenes, from running from the train on the tracks to finding the body, to Kiefer Sutherland as the villain bully guy. John Cusack plays the older brother who passed away. This is a really good movie, and it hits you when he says, you know, I never had friends like the ones I did when I was 12. I've got some friendships in my life where it is just forged by fire, man. And you know, I heard someone say that she commented, she was like, man, I want a friendship like you and Alan have. And I actually told her, I was like, I don't think you do, because you only get that strong of a bond by going through hell with another person, going through so many hard things with that person. That's what creates that bond. And I was like, so I don't know if you do want a friendship like that, because that means you got to go through some really serious stuff. And I think this movie kind of really captures that, of these kids going through these pretty intense things at the same time. And it really is just a coming of age story. It's a classic. Everyone loves this movie, and it absolutely comes in at number 6. Number 5 is going to be Hoosiers. So I actually just saw this movie last week. I told my mom and my stepdad that I'd never seen it, and they're like, that has to change. So we watched it, and I'm so glad I got to experience this movie for the first time as a coach. As a lot of you guys know, I'm the head wrestling coach for a wrestling team here in South Carolina, high school wrestling team. And to see what he was doing as a coach, see how he cared about these kids, how he cared about that team and really elevated and brought it up, and even the successes as a coach, the failures as a coach, dude, I really enjoyed this movie. And now I finally understand what my stepdad's talking about when he references Jimmy Chitwood all the time. I'm like, who are you talking about? But no, this movie was really enjoyable, thoroughly liked it, and I see why it's a classic. So that absolutely comes in at number 5. Coming in at number 4 for me is going to be Big Trouble in Little China. Now, is this a better movie than Stand By Me and Hoosiers? Probably not, but I absolutely love it. And you have just all these fantastical elements of like the evil ancient wizard who's trying to find a Chinese girl with green eyes, and he wants to suck her life force or whatever to get younger. You have like the precursor to Raiden and, you know, Mortal Kombat, and Kurt Russell's in the lead. It's just a fantastic movie, man. It's a lot of fun, just a ton of adventure filled movie, man. And dude, I love it. And it comes in at number 4. Coming in at number 3 for me is going to be Friday the 13th Part 6, Jason Lives. I've already talked about this movie a couple times. I'm not really going to go into it too much, but it is my favorite of the franchise. I think it is the best film in the franchise. This is when they realized that the formula had kind of grown stale, that it wasn't really something to be taken too seriously, so the movie starts to make fun of itself, but it never makes fun of Jason. It's actually got some of the best shots and scenes of Jason looking terrifying, and I think it's absolutely the best in the franchise. It's an annual watch for me every year around Halloween, and it absolutely comes in at number 3. Coming in at number 2, There Can Be Only One, Highlander. I freaking love Highlander, dude. And I think this is a movie that's primed for a remake. Apparently it's been in development hell for a while. They're trying to remake it. Last I heard is the creative team behind John Wick that is doing it. But the story of Highlander is that there's these certain people, right? And when something happens to them that would kill a normal human being, they get, for lack of a better term, resurrected as an immortal. And there's this ancient tournament where all of these immortals have to fight one another, and the only way to kill another immortal is by decapitation. And eventually, at the end, when it gets down to it, there's going to be the Gathering, which of course ends up being in New York City. So the Gathering gets there, and it just gets down to where there can be only one. And you have Connor McLeod versus the Kurgan, who's one of the greatest villains ever, played by the fantastic Clancy Brown. And this movie's just cool, man. It's such a cool plot. And like the prize for winning, you can either choose to be immortal forever, or you can choose to finally grow old and die. And Connor McLeod, he wants to grow old and die. Everyone he's known has died and passed on, and he's watched his wife get old and die. He's watched the little girl that he saved and rescued become older than him, and he's, you know, a father figure to her. It's got some awesome action scenes, man. And like I said, I think it's primed for a remake. I think they can redo this movie with better effects, with a better budget, but keep that same storyline. And it doesn't even really have to be Connor McLeod. You can introduce new characters, but have the Gathering, have the decapitation part, have the awesome sword fighting, and add in like how great of warriors they'd really be if they've been alive for thousands of years. If, you know, this guy's been alive for 2,000 years, then he should be a freaking fantastic fighter. You know what I mean? He should know every martial art. He should have his hands in this and that and be extremely wealthy because he's had a whole lot of time show us that and then show us how they're all just great combatants, right? Or maybe even like there's some friends and they don't want to take each other out, but they have to. That would be super cool. But anyway, I love this movie. I think it's so cool. You got Sean Connery in it as well. Not even trying to do a Spanish accent, but he's supposed to play a Spaniard. This movie's really cool. Absolutely comes in at number 2. Full of 80s cheese. And yeah, man, I love it.
There can be only one.
But speaking of there being only one, there can only be one number 1 for the year 1986. And that movie is absolutely Top Gun. This is quite possibly the most 80s of 80s movies, right? And I've heard everyone talk about, from like my dad saying that when he saw this movie, him and his buddy immediately went to the recruiter saying that they wanted to join the Navy and become fighter pilots. My stepdad is saying that he remembers when his mom took him to go see the movie. And you know, my mom remembers going to see it with her dad. And just everyone loves Top Gun. I've not met a single person who dislikes this movie or thinks it's not good. And it's not even really one of my personal favorites. I think I prefer Top Gun Maverick to the original Top Gun, but this first movie's so good, man. You just have Tom Cruise really breaking out into superstardom here with the role of Maverick. And then you have the awesome Val Kilmer as Iceman. You got Goose. You got so many iconic lines, from "Talk to Me, Goose" to "I Was Inverted" to "Negative Ghost Rider." Like, there's so many iconic lines. There's iconic scenes. That Kenny Loggins song, you know, "Danger Zone," is iconic, as well as the score. And this inspired a whole generation of kids to want to go be fighter pilots. Like, how many fighter pilots are currently serving in the US Navy right now because of the movie Top Gun? I bet it's quite a bit, man. So I think this movie's great. It is, like I said, quite possibly the most 80s of 80s movies, and it absolutely comes in at number 1. All right, everybody, that is all I got for today. Please let me know your favorite movie of 1986 down below. Did you like my list? Did you disagree with it? If you did, do so respectfully, but let me know, man. Let's have fun. Let's talk about it. Hit that like, share, and subscribe button. It helps out the channel tremendously. And remember, I love you. Jesus loves you. That's our story, and we're sticking to it. See you guys.